This time you're not getting away.
That's the way it's done.
Enemy spotted.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back, and thank you for tuning in with us for another episode of the Retro Achievements Podcast, where we cover a variety of genres, topics, and discuss the bits and bytes of yesteryear. Tonight we are digging back in on what brought us all together in the first place, the games. Whether you started on the Colecovision or the latest generation of Xbox, a bit of escapism into a world of adventure is always appreciated. These adventures allowed you to complete feats never thought possible. They carried you through a journey of trials and proving points, demanding you grow stronger and develop, be that learning a new technique the mechanics require, or literally equipping yourself with a legendary weapon, pumping your damage into the roof. The satisfaction of noticeable growth gives a unique enjoyment other media struggles to capture. For exactly that reason, I have my guest here tonight, Gal416, to dig on their experience at RA, and some games that really bring that aforementioned satisfaction. Gal, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, we got to know you through the community that Pulse runs. Taking a look at RA, though, you're no stranger to this community. Been around, looks like registered in 2020. And if you're anything like other guests I've talked to before, you probably lurked a little bit before even getting this account going. Is that similar, or is that when you actually did come aboard?
Oh, yes. I probably have known RA since probably around like 2015, 2016, because a friend of mine used to stream on Twitch, and then one day he said, you know, this Game Squad guy, he's playing some Link to the Past randomizer. Let's go over and share the love and send over love to him on Twitch. And then, you know, going over and spending time with Maximilian, as he's known on the site, and what he did and everything, playing role chant sets, doing all manners of challenges and everything. I was just floored with, you know, the kind of challenges that were around with there. And I pretty much lurked and followed it for a number of years. If anything, it's funny because I really wasn't the kind of achievement hunter back then. I kind of looked at it as being like, wow, I don't know if I could really do this. But then watching not just Max, but then Frank and Chard and other friends of mine who really played a lot of retro achievements, and just seeing them, you know, really go on and even seeing what I could do about it, like that really changed my view about it. And I was like, you know, I could really do this. And COVID kind of helped with it because I was in the house a lot. You know, I really didn't have a lot. And I was like, let me try my hand at it. Let me go and play a little bit of achievements and see how I do. So I started with Super Mario World, and the rest is history.
Right.
It's funny. I went from going, I couldn't see myself being an achievement hunter, to being now like, it's literally everything I do.
Yeah, I see you're currently ranked, you know, just barely, but hey, it counts. We'll take it in the top 1% on site here. And I'm kind of in that same vein with you. Before I came to your Notice This website, if somebody told me these achievements back in the day, I would call some of them straight up impossible. And many people have proven us wrong. Hell, you're living the experience that you're doing it yourself. I'm still just cheering from the sidelines. Ain't no way. But you know, it's one of those things. I figure a lot of the people in our community got involved with technology fairly early. You don't, you know, do this in your leisure time if you don't also have an appreciation for tech in some form. Does that ring true for you?
Oh, for sure. Like, probably a big part of what really helped getting started. Because, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm like the most tech savvy person about it. I've known a lot of people in my life that do programming and stuff on a level that never really, you know, pushed myself and really achieved. But like, I think really, if getting involved with achievements and knowing stuff, I definitely have really liked like learning just different tools and what they can do, what kinds of things they offer you and stuff. And the fact that really emulation for me started when I was really young. Like, the thought that I could play Super Metroid or any of these games on my computer was something that blew my mind when I was, you know, like 10 or 11, that I was like starting to see it like, geez, you could even do that. And then it took off like from there, where I had a lot of my games always on my computer. Whether I had a laptop, whether I had a desktop, anytime I would go through any computer, I was like, I would have to have an emulator. I would have to have that in the background, because whenever I would de-stress, whenever there was any times that I was, you know, between, you know, schoolwork and stuff, I would always bring it up.
Sure.
And then with Retro Achievements, it kind of became like even more so, because then at that point I started really learning about cores and how that all had to work, and you know, how that would be with sound mixing. I really didn't know a lot about that stuff, but I really pushed myself to really read, really get, you know, patched up with it. And then like, as becoming now into dev work, like that even pushed even further, because Then it started like getting involved in memory and stuff like that, which at first I thought there's just no way I was going to be able to do that. And I guess it's just because I've always had a knack of, if I'm wanting to do something, I have to push myself. And I have to do something that is not in my comfort zone, is not something that, I'm really used to. And if I'm going to get good at it, I have to really look up and learn about those things. And hey, maybe even there's not really a manual for me. I'm just going to have to test. I'm just going to have to throw myself out there and just, try something and see what it does.
Oh, yeah. Just so we can get an idea, how old are you?
I'm 36 years old.
All right, so pretty close to myself. It's one of those things. I had a similar experience, got involved in emulation, probably early middle school.
Yep.
And just like you're saying, absolutely fried my brain that you're telling me I can have these games. Like everyone, all these games are able to just be played right here on this. Okay, we got to go. We got stuff to do.
Oh, yeah.
And like you were saying, right on the money, there is no manual for it back then because we were young and trying to figure out what the heck we were doing. It got me, I would say, started pretty well into being curious about tech overall. We had a single computer, and if that thing, if you accidentally messed it up or broke it, well, it's up to you to fix it. We don't really got money to buy another.
Me too.
Yeah, and it's like, well, that's where the games are. I'm going to figure this out. But yeah, go on, though. You were saying you got into development a bit. You started looking at the code as if it was the Matrix and something you're never hoping to decipher. But I see that definitely didn't ring true. You've got some Metroid sets under your belt. You got some Final Fantasy in you here. I definitely see a theme
Yes.
that, kind of relates to the topic overall, and it's why I had you on. But talk to me about getting into development.
Well, it's funny. I really wasn't sure I was going to do it at first. Like, I was curious. A little bit of name dropping. I helped Televangelist with the Silver Star story, and that was probably my first experience, like, kind of seeing what's involved with it, like, that you test. I did it, of course, with, giving him feedback of, like, achievements that I was playing through. I put some ideas out there, and he did a fantastic job. But looking at it and everything, that was really my first taste of really seeing what's involved, what you're looking at. And so from that experience and just, thinking about it, I thought, deving a set would be kind of cool. But I always have this part in me where it's like, do it, go ahead with it. But then there's a part of me that's kind of like, I don't know, I can't really code. I don't really know about that stuff. I'm just going to be a fool. There's always that tug of war. Always like in my soul, I guess, in some level that I've always been. But like the part I think always that really helped with is that I still put myself out there to be like, okay, well, let me ask people, like, if I want to do this, do I really need to know that? And I made a post in the forum and I said, do I really need to have programming experience to be good at deving? Like pretty much a lot of people went in there and just said no.
Resounding no, I'm sure.
They never took a C class.
Yeah.
It really is just about that you have to be open to problem solving. You just have to be open to trying things and not being dejected if something doesn't work. That you're willing to, if something fails, you just kind of brush it off. And for me, that's always been something that really appealed to me because I've always liked to try things and always, put about things. So that was really helpful. But what especially helped tremendously was that another named Shmelioff reached out to me in DMs and said, so I heard you're curious about deving. And I was like, yeah, kind of, And he's like, come over here, let me show you. And he took me under his wing and showed me what the memory inspector looked like, what you do, what kinds of things that you do with sifting through memory and everything. And from that experience, I was like, oh my God, I can see what it is. It's not like you're just looking through the weeds looking for what memory is. No, you're doing something that's helping you be able to find when something is changing and so forth.
You're really just trying to master the toolkit.
And that's exactly what played into my emulation learning and all that kind of stuff. It was just like another tool that I really had to learn, as you said.
Now, Schmelly is somebody who has made, I believe, a ton of the Castlevania sets out there. Just, his name is pretty associated with it heavily, and those are definitely contenders for achievements that I would on paper go, that's impossible, yet many, many people have mastered these things, yourself included. What I kind of want to dig in on, the power aspect of these games a little bit more. So I don't want to cut you off, though. Keep talking to me about development. What was the next steps where you actually started to bite this off yourself? What was your first game?
Well, so I joined the junior dev program, and the first game I picked was Metroid for the GBA. I picked it because I wanted something that, at least when I'm starting out, something that has a little bit of background, so that as I go through and test things, I could have always something in the background to see, okay, am I doing this right? Am I going through, or am I just lost and I'm like not having an idea what I'm doing? But I made a mission of it to not look at what the RAM maps were or anything. I always did it myself, and then after I did my notes,
You would confirm.
then I would confirm what it was I was doing. Because you don't want to have that as a crutch. And when I did it, I saw, oh my god, I'm finding things. I'm doing it. I'm going through, I'm finding where the missiles are, I'm finding where the health is. And it really was a confidence booster.
Sure.
Because again, that kind of power where you're feeling, I'm really mastering it. I'm really getting used to it. I'm knowing what it is about it. And then from there, I remember I did Metroid, and then after I made that set, I then went on to one of my favorite games, which is Lunar Eternal Blue for the Sega CD, a really lovely JRPG. And I remember Schmelly told me, but RPGs, be careful with them because there's a lot of memory or whatever. But I thought to myself, I really like this game. That's probably going to carry me through. If I really like this game, I'm not going to give up. I'm really going to push myself with what it is.
I've definitely noticed that for other developers. If you have a love for the game, you seem
it's
to
carry
do
you
the set
through
a
all
bit
the
more
times
justice.
when there's some days where like literally nothing goes right.
Right.
Like you're doing everything. Yeah, the thing that's going to get you back
Every
up
trick
and
in
be
the
like,
book
okay,
and
I'm
you're
going to bring
getting
it up.
hosed.
Let me try it again. That's what's going to carry through. And let me tell you, that set, there definitely were moments when I started out that I wasn't finding anything. And in fact, the health was working different, like certain ways, like how it would overflow and things like that. So I was just like, okay, this is definitely going to be more of a challenge.
Definitely.
And from there, I actually had to think like, okay, well, how am I going to set up the achievement so that it factors in that an enemy is dead? Well, I have to factor in that it's going to overflow. I'm going to have to factor in these other elements. And so from there, I was able to push myself to kind of, okay, it's not just that there's anything wrong with it. I just need to factor in how I'm going to write the achievement differently. I can't assume that what worked on Metroid or works somewhere else in some other game is going to work here, because it's not. And from there, and the fact that I love Lunar so much, that's what carried me over with it. And that set is the one that I ended up graduating on. And everyone was just really helpful with it. I really want to do a shout out to the Junior Dev program because they're really helpful. They're really patient.
Absolutely.
And whenever you have problems and you're thinking, oh God, they've probably heard this 1,000 times.
We will hear it again
like,
if we did, and
no,
that's okay.
That's absolutely understandable. No, here's what you're going to have to do. And from there...
Right. I've gotten a peek into that community a time or two, and everyone seems just resoundingly supportive. And everything I'm hearing today, Carl, I'm hearing a theme, and it's a reason I had you on. We're growing stronger. We're taking challenges on that initially seem a little bit daunting, but over time and persistence and determination, you're able to overcome them. I asked you to bring some games to the table, but we're going to get to that right after we get back. Guys, RetroAchievements Podcast at gmail.com. If you want to write in listener mail, you'll be read out on air. Other than that, we will see you soon.
Well, perhaps we'll meet again, if you live that long.
Call me Tommy, darling, and make yourself comfortable.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Got a little bit of an overview on Gall, what brought them into RA, how they got into the developer program. Got a sense of that urge to just tackle challenges and get stronger. A lot of what we enjoy in our games is reflected in ourselves, I'd have to say. That being said, I wanted to dig in on specific games. Gall, I want to start with you. What is an experience, what is a game, be it a genre, an IP, something specific? Draw me to a game that defines progression, strength, growing stronger, something of that nature.
Oh, wow. I mean, for me, probably the game that has exemplified to me that sort of journey of getting better and improving over the course and just mastering it, I think, is Castlevania Symphony of the Night.
Cannot argue at all.
Yeah, I've played it so many times that my friends absolutely joke about it. Yeah, Symphony of the Night is great, we know. Because to me, it exemplifies perfectly that kind of experience, even to the point that it even takes it further, because you come in with everything. Like you have a powerful experience, and it's taken away from you.
It shows you what you can be, and then just says, not right now, you have to earn this.
Yes. you have to earn that experience.
Exactly.
And people always made a joke because I always saw that they would try to find ways, oh, you could glitch it and just earn everything and you have everything kept and everything. But I always found I could never bring myself to do those kinds of things because I'm like, no, the experience of the game is making you have to earn that ability so that when you're on that other side and you have it, you feel like a god.
Yeah, you don't get that dopamine hit if you just, cheat your way into having it.
Exactly. And it's like Symphony of Night, I think, does it really good. It's like sometimes if you know enough about the game and you've played it enough, it'll have ways that you can go around it. I mean, even Super Metroid, it's just this kind of feeling of, we're not going to stop you, but as you learn aspects, you'll find those holes yourself.
You're talking about sequence breaks, yes?
Yes.
Right.
As I went through and learned about the game, at that point, you're able to kind of break through those aspects. And so you kind of feel like you're outsmarting the game.
Right. No, I definitely did that myself in Super Metroid quite a bit. And I'd have to agree that this is probably where they got a ton of inspiration for that.
Absolutely. And in fact, that was the first game I ever played when I was very young.
Oh, wow.
Because I would watch my uncle play all these different games. But for some reason, it was Super Metroid that piqued my interest enough to be like, I want to play.
Right.
Because it was just that experience. But you see, as a kid, I didn't treasure the journey yet. I saw what my uncle could do, and I'd be like, I want to be exactly like him. I want to do that exact power. But when I played Super Metroid for the first time, I got my butt kicked.
Right, all I have is this lemon. What the hell is this? Yeah.
And at first, I was frustrated.
Right.
And actually, my experience at the time as like a 6-year-old was to throw the controller on the floor.
Oh, no. Bad move.
My uncle was not happy about that. So he turned off the game and he just said, okay, we're going to take 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And I was so embarrassed because I'd never seen my uncle ever throw a controller before.
You knew you messed up.
And I can tell you, I have never thrown a controller ever again from that experience. But I think it was kind of a good thing to learn. You're going to have challenges. Instead of letting it get you, conquer it.
Right.
So that's why when I played it again, I had a blast because I knew I had to get better with it. And, it's a struggle at first. Some people criticize the game a lot for that, but I felt like, no, that's going in line of the idea that the more you get powerful, the more the challenge goes away. The challenge doesn't grow with you. You become more.
Right. I think it couldn't be, argued that a lot of these games also bring somewhat of a sense of discovery. You want to see what's around the next corner. You want to see if the next thing you find is stronger than your current weapon. If there's something lurking behind this secret wall and you're hitting everything in sight. These games, specifically Symphony of the Night, I think it could be said you make the difficulty yourself. If you hang around one place, you can kill everything you want over and over, get over-leveled through the ceiling, and everything becomes one hit. Depending on your builds and weapons, likewise, one hit. The one that sticks out to me, I can't remember the name of it, but it's this green fist weapon that's just indomitably strong and fast.
Oh, the Fist of Tulkas?
That sounds about right.
The best fist weapon in the game.
Yeah,
it's so good.
It's brutal. It's brutal. But on the opposite foot, if you want to, add a little bit more spice and use a non-traditional weapon or not equip, the standard quote-unquote meta build, that's right at your doorstep as well. Rush through the game trying to avoid enemies, get to your bosses super underleveled. I think Schmelly designs the sets in mind where you aren't allowed to get too overpowered level-wise just for that purpose. The bosses become just cakewalk.
See, this is the joke among my friends. I've played Symphony of the Night so many times, different builds, and I played for so many years. Eventually, I just got to the point where I'm like, okay, I just don't know what else I could do. I've played it every single way, and I don't know if I could really do anything more. So then, along comes RA.
No, so then I got out the Guitar Hero controller.
But I looked at the different things that were in the achievement set, and I'm like, wow, that's actually interesting. You have to fight them with the turfing? I would never think to do that, because it's such a bad sword. It has, no power to itself. And I'm like,
no.
Well, let me try it.
I definitely agree that this is a community that brings people who are looking for more ways to enjoy the games they love.
Exactly. And of course, I knew some aspects of the game, so it really helped out when you're doing challenges. Because, for example, Karasuman, the Crow Man that you fight in there, there's an issue where if you hit him in the air at just the right frequency of hits, he can't do anything. He's just
Get
in the
stun
air.
locked, stupid. Yeah.
So, like, the turfing challenge with him was kind of funny to me because I'm thinking all I have to do is just make sure he doesn't land on the ground.
Right.
But I appreciate it because it's like, if you know the game, it kind of builds on it, like to the point where eventually you're doing other kinds of challenges, and that's where I really appreciated RA.
Right. That idea is captured and rewarded.
And rewarded for it. Like, you know, because many people, when I told my friends, are like, wow, you're kind of weird. Why would you do that?
Yeah, good job.
You know, like,
okay.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, like in RA, it's like, wow, that's so cool that you can
Right, have
do
some
that.
points for that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, it rewards it. And it pushed me that there was other stuff to enjoy about that game.
Right.
And I thought to myself, I can't do anything else. Boy, was I wrong.
You know, when you hit that point of familiarity with a game, I call it seeing the math, where you're less playing Castlevania and you're more just running numbers against each other. You're looking at a spreadsheet, you know jump arcs, you know enemy path trajectories, you know stats on an in-depth level. And I think a lot of that familiarity is required for some of these achievements. You know, you have to have such an understanding of the game that it becomes second nature.
Yes. And I think the good things that make good sets, at least to me, it causes you to kind of know what makes that game so special.
Right.
Playing that set really established why I love Symphony of the Night so much. It's almost like a sandbox. What you do with it is what you bring to it. And it's kind of like how RA is to me. You could push yourself and get as many badges as you want.
Your enjoyment factor. Exactly.
Now joining RA and trying those sets as well and those challenges has caused me to see how there really isn't a limit to what you can bring. The limit only is yourself.
I can't agree more. I could go on about Castlevania forever, and just as a hint, we will be talking about it again. It's on my list. But the first one I want to bring to the table on my end is Morrowind. A little bit, you know, we got some time before we get it on Retro Achievements, but I can't wait to see what people here do with it. That was a game I experienced as my first Elder Scrolls on Xbox. June 7th, 2002 is the year it came out, and having that game was just a complete, for lack of a better term, and just a mindfuck. I had played nothing like it prior. Absolutely zero experience, no idea who Bethesda was or why what I was holding in my hand was special. But when I think of growth and progression, that game comes to mind, maybe not so much as the shining example from the game itself, but combined with the fact that I had no idea about that kind of genre existing. So it asked a lot of me. And for people who haven't played it, this is a game that, you know, you might know the series from, say, Skyrim or Oblivion, but this was before they had quest markers. You had to talk to everybody in depth, and it wasn't spoken. You get to reading, little one. You better take notes. You better learn keywords, and you would have to just pay attention to what people are saying. Like, okay, the cave is past the second fork on the left side, and the broken signpost is where you'll want to venture off the road. And if you're not paying attention, you're not going to get anything done. Furthermore, the game was so demanding of you when it came to character creation because it was so willing to let you do whatever you would like. You can make a god-awful character, a god-awful custom build, and it will release you into the world happily and say, good luck, you're not long for this place. You would have to figure out, you know, armor classes. What am I going to be? That was the first game that introduced me to that. But each time I don't care. The first time I killed the smallest little chitinous bug was an absolute thrill. Because that was my, even gods bleed moment. Where this game that I can barely leave the starting town here. Okay, I might have a shot at this. I just have to figure it out. And I think I rented it from Blockbuster because I didn't have the manual that explained, hey, this little green bar that keeps going down, that's your stamina, and that's why you're missing all the time. You're running everywhere and getting into fights. Slow down. But is this a series you played, or I'm sure the series, definitely, but did you ever get involved with Morrowind at all?
No, I would say I was more of like an observer more times because my friends played to death Oblivion, Skyrim. I wouldn't say it was a game I played a lot, but I did get the feeling of why people appreciate that series so very much, because of how much it gives you control over the kinds of things you want to be in the world you're going into. And I think that's a big part of it, is getting you involved and feeling that you have agency.
Yes.
And a lot of times I think where games fail, when you feel like you have no hand in what's going on.
You're railroaded. I mean, there's a reason why every Final Fantasy was a smashing success, arguably, up until 13, and its largest criticism was, I feel like I'm in a hallway.
See, the linearity wouldn't be a problem, but it wasn't that. It was the fact, like, you feel like your hand is held. You feel like you're not going anywhere.
It had an auto-battle button. Like, what are we doing?
Like, I would sit there like, why would you even think that was a good idea? It should never be that you're coasting.
Right.
That just kills everything for me. But that's totally opposite of the good games like in Final Fantasy, especially also Elder Scrolls, because in there you feel absolutely when you're picking who you're going to be, what kind of weapon build you're going to have.
Every decision matters.
Every decision is you.
Yes.
So you're able to accept it. It's something I did. I have to get better
Yes.
at what I do. As you said, like when you're beating the shit out of... Sorry.
You're fine. We swear here. You're fine.
Sorry, the passion eventually flows when you're talking about these kind of things. When you're getting that point where you beat like the super boss, or you beat this difficult enemy, and you just feel just such a rush where you're like, wow, I did that.
Right, no.
I pushed myself to do that kind of thing.
I'm right there with you. This game, I had friends over just to show them, like, guys, you have to check this out. And we're all just glued to the thing. It was a fantastic experience once you finally, much like you were talking about in Castlevania, once you really start to understand these systems, and I mean really digest them, you start to see ways to break them. This game let you craft your own spells, and it was just as free in that aspect as it was in every other decision aspect. You really got more restricted when it came to Oblivion, and especially Skyrim, but Morrowind would let you make some absolutely busted items. And it was the same kind of thing. Am I going to use that ultra-strong fist weapon and just smash my way through Castlevania, or am I going to use just bare knuckles over here? And that was the spellcrafting system in Morrowind. Once I really understood that, it was just all doors were open.
Absolutely. And I think that game has to have that you, the player, have accomplished where you've gotten.
Yes.
And that when you're on the other side, like, look at that, you're like, you know what? That was great.
Exactly. It's satisfaction.
Yeah. I mean, if you put it down, you're like, I don't know if I'm ever going to pick this up again.
Exactly. So keep it going. What do you got next on your list for us, man?
Well, another one that I have is Mega Man X.
Oh, like an absolute classic, and nobody is going to argue the level of satisfaction and progression.
And it's kind of similar. I mean, there's a theme to it. You start off weak. I mean,
Yep.
You literally are almost killed.
Yep.
And then your buddy comes in and does all this, and he's like,
Johnny Badass.
wow, look what he can
Yes.
do. And so you're like a Zero fanboy, because you're just like, oh my god, he's such a badass. I want to be like that.
Yes.
And so when he says, you could almost as powerful as I am.
Yeah, when that sequelitis video came out, that was a game, one of my earlier games I grew up with, and I played it into absolute oblivion. It was one I could know front and back. Those kind of things where if you really wanted to, you could play it scene for scene in your head.
Yes.
And that's Mega Man X for me. And that moment that Zero does show up, blasts Vile, just makes him flee out of there. When Ego Raptor was talking about that years and years later, however many it's been forever since he released that thing.
Yes.
I was glued to the screen, practically just screaming, yes, that, yes, again, yes, I agree.
That's what it is.
Yes, it's a fantastic representation. The series as a whole, really. Mega Man X prides itself, and they took that into their future series, ZX,
Oh, yeah.
Even the Battle Network series. All these games are just getting stronger, leveling up, making yourself more powerful, and it's an actual tangible, reward of persistence and overcoming challenge.
Even later on, when you do get all your powers and get all the armor pieces and everything, and you're just flying a mile a minute, including the Hadouken.
Oh yeah.
Eventually, when you get to that part where Zero, sacrifices himself, and you're there, and you realize from everything that you've done that it's like, okay, it's not just that you've built all this stuff, now you've overcome to the point where you're yourself, because you were looking at him, oh, he's the hope, now you're the hope.
Yeah, that was definitely one of the first few games and moments that made me feel something that a game really, at the time wasn't trying to push too hard.
Yes.
Nowadays, Every game is trying to think, how do we convey a message or, have some kind of impactful moment that makes you have a tear jerk or whatever. But back in the SNES era, not as common. And when that happened, I remember feeling like somber. Like, what is going on? He's going to come, but they killed my boy!
And I'm going to say, the music that plays in the stage after that's probably...
You are out for blood.
It just conveys so perfectly the experience that you feel about that. I'm going to do everything for my fallen friend.
Yes.
You feel it. Like, it's almost like a requiem in a way. It's kind of like you paying tribute. And they really put those pieces together in a way to really build on the narrative.
Yeah. Something that comes to mind for me on that aspect, if you didn't collect everything before getting there, Zero gives you his weapon. And now you get to, charge into battle with the weapon of your friend. Sure, he's gone, but he's still with you a little bit, and you're going to make sure that both of you, in some aspect, see it through.
Yep. In fact, if anything, that probably conveys it better. You're kind of carrying on his legacy in a way, the fact that he gives you the weapon rather than Dr. Light doing it.
Yeah, I think, the canon is Zero. I'm talking out my ass here, but I'd have to argue that the canon is Zero giving you the weapon, and getting it early is just a little bonus.
I'd agree with it.
We'll keep it that way. I'm writing the canon. Capcom, get on. All right, so my next game on the list, not a popular entry overall, but I have some nostalgic love for it just because it was something I owned on the NES, and back in the day, the games as a kid that you got, and that's what you had. You better play it. Zelda 2.
Oh, nice.
Came out, in 1988, so several years before I was born. But that was a game that, Nintendo took a crack at changing and pivoting Zelda's direction, trying to see what kind of new mechanics they can use or adjust the gameplay, give it new flavor. It seems each entry has something fun for the players to discover and experience. This one, they decided, hey, let's try to give it a level up system. They had different stats in here. Almost a page out of Final Fantasy's book where you had random encounters on this overworld map, but real-time battles in this side-scrolling fashion. It felt a little foreign to the Zelda that came before it, but with a little persistence, you could start mastering the combat fairly easy. Enemies had patterns, there was ways to take advantage of your movement, and as you got through the game, you would learn new abilities, new techniques with your sword, you would learn new spells, you could jump higher, you could turn into a fairy at one time. You got the iconic downward thrust. It came from this game. Big one that's known mostly from the Super Smash Bros. Series, Link's Down A. That comes right from Zelda 2.
Yes.
And so many people aren't aware of that. But it's a game that at the start you feel faced with an impossible task, and by the end of it, you feel that the world is just nothing can't be conquered.
It's not that a game does something different that should automatically be thrown in the garbage or treated badly.
Agreed.
I think it's ultimately what they do with it. And I think Zelda 2 really handles it very well. I think it can show that there's another element to playing Zelda. You can play it in a different aspect that has levels. It's like when you're playing it, you feel like you're playing a Zelda game.
Yes.
Like it has that kind of vibe in it. It's masterclass, and like you just don't judge a book by its cover. Yes, it's different, but give it a chance. That's kind of the thing of challenging yourself. Sometimes you're going to be faced with something that's very different. And Zelda 2, I think, really embodies that. And one common criticism I hear about it that's usually used is, you go through the game and if you die, you go all the way back to where Zelda is.
Yes.
But if you're at the Grand Palace at the end, if you die in the Grand Palace, you start at the Grand Palace. And people are like, well, why wasn't that earlier or whatever like that? And I find it as an interesting kind of bonus. You've gone to the end of the game. You've pushed yourself
right
to go all that way to the Grand Palace to get to where you are.
We'll at least do you this solid.
We're doing you this because you have shown that you deserve that perk. Because you've earned it. All the game overs and Ganon laughing in your face every single time.
Iconic noise. I could hear that when I'm 85 and I'll know exactly where it is.
Me too. Yeah. And I think that I don't look at it as a flaw. I see it as the game kind of telling you, you've come this far.
Yes.
And I saw it as almost the developers patting you on the back slightly.
So, for me, what I saw was, okay, you were able to do that. Well, you know what? We're going to respond you right here because what you have to do next is even harder.
Yes.
It was almost like, congratulations, you beat level 1. Now the game can really begin. Oh, shit. No. And it wasn't level 1, obviously, but that end palace was absolutely massive and daunting.
Huge. The biggest one in the entire game.
Yeah, they knew what they were throwing at you, and that's why I think they were confident enough to say, like, oh yeah, you can respawn here. Good luck. You're going to need it.
Yes.
But keeping it moving, what's next on your list, man? Give us your third.
Well, since you picked the Zelda game, I'm not going to pick what I have on here. But actually, I talked a little bit about this before, and again, it's an odd pick, Final Fantasy.
Okay.
A lot of the games, especially from 4 to 9, did the exact same thing, the active time battle.
Yeah.
You obviously had a similar feeling with regards to how Final Fantasy was, but the developers still would throw things different in there. The job system, the junction system. There would be just so many different ways you could customize or handle your character growth, so you can never really be like, yeah, next game is going to be exactly what I did in this one. You have to be ready that the developers are going to throw you into the woods again, and you're going to have to learn this system. Now, of course, you'll talk to people and they'll give you ups and downs about how each of those systems are.
Sure.
But the fact that a series can do that.
Yeah.
But Final Fantasy did away with that. Each of them is going to be unto itself its own island.
For sure.
You're definitely going to have to learn some things. And I just like that. I liked that I could never be comfy.
So you know what? I got a Final Fantasy on my list too, so let's combine those two right here. And I'm going to ask you, do you have any particular game that the system is your favorite? You know, for me, for instance, I picked Final Fantasy 12 because I fell in love with the license board.
Oh, the license board is really good. For me, Final Fantasy 5.
Wow.
You have the job system.
Yes.
You have so much customability of what you can bring to your characters. And not only that you can give them job roles, but as you learn the jobs, you can bring in different qualities of what you like about those jobs to make your own character.
Custom knit team as well.
Yes. And I like that kind of thing of mixing and matching, but also building on all the things you could do. In my opinion, really found a nice balance in that way, where by the end of the game, it's the best class you could do. It's not even all the separate classes that you have. It's the bear one where you get to choose what kind of qualities you want to do.
Freelancer ended up being the best.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do remember each time you discovered one of these crystals, it was just so exciting. You know, if it was your first playthrough, what am I getting? What's going to be next? What potential jobs do I have on the menu now?
And the license board is kind of that way too, where it went through, you'd see what was coming up on the board, what kinds of things you'd have available, and you're just like, oh wow, I could do this kind of element. So 12 really carries a lot of that element too.
And just the series as a whole, as you were saying, they keep throwing curveballs, so you don't get too comfortable with it, and I think that's a lot of what brings people back. Obviously, the story is a huge part of the Final Fantasy love. Everybody seems to eat up the story, and there's a reason that the remakes of 7 are selling like hotcakes.
Yes.
But again, they updated the job system a bit, not job system, but their form in 7's to a more modern, slightly different variation. So even diehard fans aren't going to be bored with this thing. If you've played it 20 times before, you're still going to have a blast.
But one thing I've really liked that they did was that they took elements of where 7 was, but then modernizing it with other elements and giving it its own identity in that. And that's what's something that made me really respect it a lot. They found a way to interject these kind of elements that I felt that it was a really interesting best of both worlds that they tried to merge in.
I agree. Moving on to the next pick, I gotta go back to, it's definitely a nostalgic entry for me. It's chosen for being my first introduction to this, we'll call it, phase of the IP. So we're going back to Castlevania, this time Circle of the Moon on the Game Boy Advance.
Ooh.
I actually didn't even know about Symphony of the Night at the time. I went from Castlevania 3, Castlevania Bloodlines, and then right here to the one on the Game Boy Advance. So,
oh, nice.
Yeah, I had only known and loved Castlevania as this side-scroller, go kill Dracula, go kill your standard Frankensteins, you know, whatever's out there, giant bat probably, all this shit. And I boot up the game, and there's a title screen. It's asking me for my name. And I'm like, all right, standard. Castlevania 3 asked me for my name, no big deal. Starts giving me a movie scene. I'm like, still standard? All right, Castlevania 3 has some movie scenes. We're okay. We're all right. And then it's like, I'm getting introduced to characters, and this text box won't stop, and what is going on, and who is that, and why is... Okay, I'm falling. The game began. Okay, all right. Well, I'll get my health bar, and the timer will appear at the top of the screen soon, and that's when I can start moving around. It's probably still this cutscene. There's no timer.
Yeah.
There's no sub-weapon box. Where's my score? Oh my god, I'm playing now. And yeah, I just started moving around. But it was my first experience in that kind of, when they adjusted to being that RPG Metroidvania.
That's a great one because, Circle of the Moon, I actually didn't know about Circle of the Moon until a little while later because I played some of the DS games later on.
Sure.
But then I looked back and of course there was Aria, but then I saw that there was Circle of the Moon and I got to play it and I was like, wow, this is a lot of fun. Most people look at Aria and think, okay, that's when, we were back to like Symphony of the Night-esque in a way.
Sure.
I'd say Circle of the Moon was more interesting because while I did like the Soul system, I did like the card system a lot that they had at Circle of the Moon.
Yes.
The DSS combo, I don't think gets a lot of, and I understand people say, oh, a lot of the cards are what they are, whatever. But I liked that you could really mix and match, and they did
mix and match. Yeah.
It's something that I hope that they bring back to. Well, I don't know. Konami, obviously, where they are now, probably won't happen.
They're busy with pachinko and everything else.
But to me, it was a shame that it wasn't really picked up as much in later titles because I thought that was a really good idea of how you could customize it to how you wanted to play or how you wanted to power up.
I think they were right on the cusp of it. I agree it could have used some more polish. A big criticism, and I'm sure hindsight's 20/20 for them as well, that how am I supposed to know which of these enemies drop these damn cards?
Yes.
Quality of life improvements could definitely be available, but put some polish on it. What if we took, it was one of the DS games where you could bind a red, yellow, and blue soul to different hotkeys?
Oh, yeah.
I can't recall exactly the name of that one specifically, but what about having combined the concept of the DSS where, hey, you have a fourth soul slot that combines the power of 2 souls, and each of these combinations is going to do something unique and fun. Go ahead and experiment, see what you can come up with.
That would have been really nice. And I think, actually, that would have been a great way of expanding, because some people think, oh, nothing much more you could do with the soul system. No, there's an idea right there. Boy, that would actually be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I might have just stumbled on an idea. Okay, get out of the pachinko game, Konami. We got work.
I would hope so.
Yeah, man. How far they've fallen. You see it a lot with a lot of developers and, giant, not RA developers, but giant companies and stuff like that, just losing their roots.
No, I mean, there was a time where Konami was one of those titles I really, grew with them. And I played a little bit of the classic Vanias, and I love Rondo, I love Super Castlevania 4.
Oh, yeah.
And all of those titles. But, for some reason, and I think it's because I played Super Metroid as my first game, and then my uncle was like, I know a game you're going to love, too. And he introduced me to Symphony of the Night, and then,
Sure enough.
It's literally Metroid. and so I built with that. There was a point where Konami was one of those companies that I really looked forward to what they were going to bring out.
Synonymous with fun. If you saw Konami, you knew you were going to have a good time at one point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of sad. At first I was pissed off when I heard, what they were doing and everything. But nowadays, whenever it comes up, I'm like, I'm kind of bummed. It feels like the gaming community kind of lost something.
Right. It's the friend you grew up with who was really awesome, really cool, good person. And then, you lose touch with them. You go look them up, see what they're up to, and you can't help but be a little sad.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What could be.
Exactly.
What's missed.
Yeah.
But I don't mean to be bringing
No, you're good. It's the fact of, it's the nature of the beast. These games, products of their time and cherished for a reason. You can't become too attached to a name alone, because if you think about it, the people who made Castlevania Symphony of the Night are probably not even working at Konami anymore for the most part.
It's true.
Yeah.
And now that you think about that, I've Iga, who left the company, who was involved with it. Bloodstained. He went on, and let me tell you, that game...
Fantastic. It is the love letter.
Every vibe. And I sat there playing, I'm like, this is everything...
Yes.
The man knows.
Yes.
With the vibe that I felt it. And the same experience of learning, of discovery, all those things are embedded in that game to a T.
It's a fantastic. It's a good morale boost to know that, hey, like I said, don't get too attached to the name. Follow the creators. They still got it.
Exactly.
It's like Kojima. He left Sony and it was, oh no, oh God, is this it? And he says, oh no, this isn't it. I'm coming back, and I'm coming back strong. Yeah.
True that. Just a kind of reminder that the things we grow up and we love, it lives on in the fans and the people that were inspired by those things. That's why, for example, another game that I really love is AM2R. That was released, and this is a fan game.
Oh, yes.
That was released, that was Metroid 2 built like Zero Mission. And I had followed it for years because I had a buddy who was in high school back in like 06 or something. And then years later, I heard that it was up for download. And I was like, oh, wow, that's still going on.
Yeah.
I forgot about it.
Right.
I didn't even know. I forgot that it was even happening. And let me tell you, when I sat down and you land on the planet and you go in there.
You get a little teary-eyed.
I actually got a little bit because I was like,
yeah.
Dr. M64, if you're out there, shout-outs, man. You knew exactly what that experience was, landing on the planet.
That ominous
and
music.
Going down
Yes.
into the bowels of
Yes.
SR. Yes, like, there's just nothing like that. And to recapture that was great. And I know it's a fan game and Nintendo and
If it wasn't Nintendo, other companies would have hired that man to be on the actual company.
Nintendo, this guy. Why are you just like...
Right, why wouldn't you bring somebody of that talent on board? Look what they're doing for your IP for free.
Yeah, heck, his game was the only thing that was released for the 30th anniversary.
Right, it's so disappointing.
But you know what? He was eventually hired by Moon Studios.
Good.
And he worked on one of the Ori games. I think it was the Will-O-Wisps, and he was brought on as a monster designer and stuff like that, and a map designer.
So did have a good ending.
Exactly. It just is a shame. One day I hope he's hired for Metroid. Maybe Nintendo will
wake up,
wise up.
Yeah, come on,
and
guys.
realize it.
So we're nearing in the final chunk of our game list. I just have one left. I believe you do as well. Did you bring the strongest for last?
The only game I would think, because I'm going to double dip a little bit with this, because you said Zelda 2.
Sure.
And so I think it's fair now that we gave a little space to that. And I think it's a good one to end on. Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past.
You know, it was between Zelda 2 and Link to the Past for me, and it just was because I figured mine was less talked about and you might bring it, so I'm glad you did.
Because let me tell you, Zelda 2 totally deserves it. I don't think that game gets enough love. And Link to the Past, to me, it totally exemplifies the experience of Zelda to a T, at least classic Zelda. You know that you're the hero, and you're fated to do all these things. All these things rely on you. They're not going to save themselves. Hyrule isn't going to be okay. And bit by bit, you go through and you discover all these different dungeons. I was surprised. Even as a kid, I was like, wow, they have all these different dungeons, and all of them feel different.
Yeah.
All of them are unique. And you think to yourself, after a while, if you have a few dungeons, I'm thinking to myself, wow, can you keep it going? Are you able to keep it fresh?
Right.
And that every dungeon, even after that, is good? And they do it.
It does. Yeah, it does.
And that's what blew my mind about it, even when I was very young playing the game, that like when you see all those 7 crystals and you go to every single one of them, and every single one of those dungeons has an identity.
Right.
To this day, I'm still floored by it.
It really became an iconic series-defining staple that got started in this game, and that was, I think, a lot of what gave those dungeons their flavor. You would find a unique item within that dungeon that meant to basically conquer it or find a unique way to traverse it.
Absolutely.
That would stick around in the series for many entries to come. You know, Ocarina of Time had the same thing. You got to go to this dungeon, find the unique weapon. I'm going to use it in some way to traverse this dungeon, and use it probably to defeat the boss in some aspect.
Yep.
Another thing that I think of with that Link to the Past is, as far as I'm aware, it was the first one that you got that preamble. You know, much like my experience in Circle of the Moon, not having a cutscene in Castlevania or really, you know, much story beyond Dracula's evil and you better go kill evil. Zelda usually was just, hey, welcome to the world. Zelda's in trouble. Go kill evil.
Yeah.
This is the first one where your uncle wakes you up or whatever, and he's like, hey, man, we got shit to do. Let's go. I know you're not ready, and you're just kind of a little peasant boy, but get your stuff. We got to go.
I didn't think about it as much until years later when I played it. And it's kind of, I think, the feeling from the original Final Fantasy that at the end, what does Link wish for? He wishes for the world to go back to where it is, where everyone was happy. The people who died are there.
Yep.
You know, all the stuff, like a whole time warp. But I thought, that means nobody's going to know the heroism that he did.
Yeah, it is the ultimate self-sacrifice.
And I was like, that's true heroism.
Absolutely.
You did it because it was the right thing to do.
It is 100%.
Maybe this is a way to segue for wrapping up the whole thing on the experience of accomplishment. I think the ultimate is when you know.
Yes.
That you've accomplished something. You know, it's great to have the badges, it's great to have all the stuff, whatever, but when you accomplish something, deep in your being, you know you did that.
When that is the reward, yes.
You did it. You succeeded, and you feel it. You know that you're accomplished, and you did everything that you could do. And I think that the fact that the game ended that way, that you're still feeling accomplished, you still feel a satisfaction, despite that revelation.
It's invaluable.
It's difficult to put in words.
No, I understand, though. I get exactly where you're coming from, because my final pick is the complete antithesis to that.
Ooh.
Yeah, it intentionally robs you of that feeling when you finally surpass all odds and you do what is considered to be unthinkable by everybody in this game, who looks at you like a madman and tells you everybody who's trying to do what you've done before suffered a terrible fate. And the game I'm bringing to the table is the first Diablo.
Ooh.
Yes, released in 97, taking place entirely in Tristram. You would delve deeper into different dungeons around this town and eventually into the bowels of hell itself, a series that has become absolutely iconic, still living on to this day. But this was the first time that you were pitted against the forces of literal hell and told, well, you better figure it out. The whole atmosphere of this game is trying to defeat you. Everything is doom and gloom. It's not just the enemies taking out your health, it's the townspeople and the stories you're hearing taking out your morale.
Yep.
It's up to you to find the next, reason to carry on and persevere and save these people. Getting further into the dungeon, the first encounter, the first major boss you encounter is the Butcher, and the absolute terror at the time that when his sound clip played and you entered his room, how fast he moved compared to anything else you had fought up so far into that game. It was just pants shitting. to think that you were going to have to figure out a way to grow strong enough to beat this guy was intimidating. But once you actually got it done, it's that first crack in the door. You get your foot in the door and you're like, okay, got some tactics now, I'm figuring this out. And, however many hours later, when you finally do take down Diablo and you have this success, it is immediately robbed from you. Immediately. Leading eventually to the events of the second game. The Soul Stone embedded in the head, this whole thing that you sought after. Your hero is now corrupted by the very thing he sought to destroy. And it is using that same sense of self-sacrifice, but everybody will know who you are, and you will not be receiving accolades for it.
No, it's the complete opposite. You've become the very thing that they can't stand.
Yes.
And I think in a different way, you can kind of look at it as power corrupts, but also as we accomplish and as we push, there's never an end to the story. Yes, okay, you accomplished, you killed Diablo, you did everything, but the journey isn't over.
Life goes on.
Life goes on. Other challenges come there.
Yes, and it's even a step further. Say you're not in the picture. What are the consequences for what you have done,
It's just a constant reminder of that, as you said, of pushing yourself. You risk losing sight of the bigger picture,
right.
Of the fact that, this is only one plus. No, it's just one part of the puzzle. The journey is never ending.
Yes, exactly. And in the same kind of vein, everybody is the main character of their own story. So everybody else is doing the same thing you are. Time advances, it marches on. And those decisions, ultimately a lot of these games that we've talked about today, they all have choices. They all have that sense of discovery. They all have the consequence and the freedom to make those choices leading to your success or your downfall, and it's in your hands. That being said, guys, we got a little bit more to cover after we get back. RetroAchievementsPodcast at gmail.com. We will see you soon.
Too slow.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Just was going over a lot of our games that kind of exemplify power and discovery, development, growing stronger. Had some awesome hits, awesome bangers on there from both parties, and I feel like if, Gal, you're just like me, we could have had a 3-hour episode here if we don't shut up.
When it comes to video games, there's no shortage of just so many games that highlight that kind of sense of accomplishment of where you feel you've discovered and you found a good place of just mastering what they offer.
Right. I can't agree with you more. Just on a broad perspective, I'm trying to think of it myself because I do see a through line. I see a theme here. What is it about these games that they keep putting up hit numbers? Some recent ones that come to mind, not too recent, but like Dead Cells was fantastic. Hades is growing stronger. Everyone is very much looking forward to Silksong, if that ever drops, because the first one gave a fantastic sense of discovery and getting stronger in development from starting as just this little creature and tiny little weapon. What is the core root of this? What makes these games so powerful?
I think a lot of times, and it probably just goes with a lot of video games in general, the best ones are where you can see yourself in the game. Link, Alucard, Hollow Knight, when you see them, I would wager that you really don't see those characters. They're kind of like the avatar for you. When you're going and you're doing all those things, you're experiencing what the developers have in store with you. It really appeals to that human connection, that kind of ability to where we feel like we're going through and traversing and experiencing this. Maybe it's a little bit of the anthropologist in me. We're very visual creatures. When it comes the best games like that, I think why Metroidvania especially, why a lot of those games go in there, is because while we're doing it, we feel like we are growing. We are getting better. And yes, those characters are doing it in the game. It's not us one-to-one. But we feel like when we've gotten that Master Sword, when we've gotten the Crissaegrim, it's because we've accomplished getting there. And so for me, it's really that human touch. It's the gamer seeing themselves going through and learning those particular tools and those experiences. And no matter how many games you see, people just resonate with it. Because some people will be like, can a Metroidvania, or I think they call it search action. I forget what more like modern term is called for it now. But I think the reason why is because it just has that, and it respects the player. You can do this. We don't need to put you on rails, because at the end we want you to be in this game. We want you to make this game your experience.
That's interesting, and I think you're onto something. Because a game that comes to mind that might not have as much of a power growth, but nobody really is out here fanboying for Gordon Freeman. You're playing as yourself, basically. And I think that echoes a lot across these games, and it's a fantastic point. A lot of these things, sure, as you said, it is the character, quote-unquote, getting stronger, but you are living the struggle. If you set the controller down, the character doesn't still win the game. And I think that satisfaction is, you mentioned your anthropology side of things, and I think there might be some meat on that bone. There's a lot of, what we're basically doing is stimulating monkey brain with simulated challenge and virtual reward. We like to problem solve. We like to have pattern recognition. We like to make sense and categorize things. And a lot of these games, the better you are at doing those things, the stronger you're going to be.
Yep.
It might actually have that itch scratch for that back of our old primordial ooze brain there. It's interesting to think about. There's a lot of that kind of aspect in everyday life. Doing better at your job, accomplishing a new skill, tackling a new hobby, and finding it successful. You are trying to do basically the same thing that these games offer in a more convenient package. It might just be these games are awesome because of the human condition.
Well, I mean, even in my own life, like outside of gaming, I think it's even played into my job as well, because it was something that I really didn't do. I mean, I talked a little bit about it with, anthropology, but like I went on to get more involved in things that are more customer service, driven. And at first that was really outside of my experience. So it kind of mirrors how it was with gaming. Let me try it out. Let me see what the experience is. And now I've been there for several years now.
Sure.
And to look back on that and think, wow, when I was beginning it, I had not the foggiest idea if I was even going to succeed.
Well, let's look at what you were talking about early on in the episode. That seems to be a common theme for you.
Yeah.
You looked at the memory, you had no idea, thought no way. You looked at the achievements first time, what? No way.
Yeah.
It seems, like you say, you throw yourself out of the comfort zone, give yourself a try, make yourself experience it, and you'd be surprised at what you can do.
Absolutely. And if anything, RetroAchievements definitely has played some part in it as well. That's like, don't think that the challenges out there are things you can't do. In fact, you might surprise yourself when you just make it a goal, when you set yourself to do it. And then all of a sudden you look back, you're like, wow, I actually did that achievement. Wow, I actually coded that point, or I made that sale.
Accomplishment.
Not selling yourself short of the capabilities that you can do. And that's definitely been something that gaming has really built from me and all the way to now. Who knows where that adventure would lead, but I think there's just a lot of possibilities there.
I can't agree more. Well, Gal, we're getting near the end of our episode here. We covered a lot of fantastic topics. If you had just a couple of final thoughts to give people out there, the retro listeners here, what would you tell them? What do you want people to know? What's something to keep in mind?
Well, for me, I think the best thing always to do is never sell yourself short. A lot of things out there that through my 36 years that I've been on this planet, don't let that voice get to you.
Right.
Don't think that you can't do it, because in truth, you can do all this stuff. All you need to do is just take that first step. And believe me, after you do that and you look back, you'll be glad you did. And I can say being an achievement developer and achievements in general and doing all those kind of things from gaming on up, I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Fantastic. And I can't agree more about that voice. And I'm sure you would be on board. No matter how much you accomplish, it isn't about eliminating that voice. That voice will never shut up. It's about learning to not listen.
Just isolate and just be like, no, that's not true. I do know that I can do it.
Right. Well, Gal, fantastic time. Thrilling discussion. Glad to have you on here. Maybe sometime down the line we dig this back up, we find another topic. But one last time, guys, RetroAchievements Podcast at gmail.com. Send in that listener mail. But we will see you all next time.